German engineers estimated their massive Ruhr Valley dams could withstand the heaviest Allied bombers. They were wrong. On the night of May 16, 1943, 19 Avro Lancaster bombers from No. 617 Squadron RAF flew 260 miles from RAF Scampton to Germany, carrying a weapon dismissed by many, the 9,000-pound upkeep mine, engineered by Barnes Wallis to skip across water at 240 miles per hour. Within hours, two of Germany's most critical dams, Mana and Edersee, were breached. Floodwaters inundated the Ruhr, crippling power plants, mines, and steelworks thought invulnerable to aerial attack. In total, No. 617 Squadron launched 19 Lancasters, each equipped with the spinning bouncing bomb and modified bomb bays. The aircraft flew at only 60 feet above reservoir surfaces, using twin Aldis lamps to maintain altitude. German defenses, equipped with anti-aircraft positions and emergent torpedo netting, had judged their dams as secure against conventional weapons. The British crews, led by Wing Commander Guy Gibson, lost 8 aircraft and 53 men in the assault, but achieved direct hits. The resulting breaches unleashed over 330 million tons of water, flattening communities and industrial targets downstream within minutes. The Germans had believed the mathematics and engineering of their dams would withstand any challenge. They had not anticipated a weapon specifically designed to exploit the weaknesses their calculations neglected. The result? A catastrophic failure filmed from the air, as British camera operators documented the near-instant impact. This is the factual account of the operation that transformed confident dismissal into stunned disbelief by using precision, innovation, and meticulously executed risk. At 2,150 hours on May 16, 1943, Wing Commander Guy Gibson of the Royal Air Force led the first wave of No. 617 Squadron from RAF Scampton in Lincolnshire, England, with a single objective: breach the Mana and Edersee dams to disrupt German industrial production in the Ruhr Valley. Gibson's force comprised 19 specially modified Avro Lancaster Mk3 bombers, each fitted to carry a 9,000-pound upkeep mine and a crew of 7. On the defensive side, General Major Richard Schimpf oversaw Luftwaffe flak units and Wehrmacht security detachments positioned around primary water installations. The defenders maintained 12.7 mm Flakvierling 38 anti-aircraft guns, searchlights, and early warning radar posts at strategic points along the Mana and Edersee dams, with torpedo nets deployed to guard against underwater attack. The Luftwaffe's night fighters, including Junkers Ju-88s and Messerschmitt Bf-110s, were on standby at airfields within 60 kilometers, but not directly tasked with dam defense. The Luftwaffe assessed the dams as virtually impregnable, relying on 120-foot thick earthwork cores, 134-foot tall masonry faces, and layered spillways to withstand attack. Technical data from German Army engineers calculated that no existing aerial bomb could penetrate these designs. However, British intelligence had noted that even a minor breach would release more than 100 million cubic meters of pent-up water downstream, enough to devastate factories and power infrastructure with a single strike. Aerial reconnaissance photographs from April 1943 showed torpedo net positioning and increased anti-aircraft deployments. Still, German assessments failed to account for an airborne mine that could skip across water surfaces and detonate precisely at the dam base. The flooded Ruhr provided a further tactical consideration. Surrounding terrain funneled water at high speed, compounding the destructive effect downstream. What unfolded over the next 8 hours would determine the operational tempo of the German armaments sector for months to follow. At 2,339 hours, the first wave of Lancasters, led by Wing Commander Guy Gibson, descended to attack Mana Dam. Each aircraft, flown at 60 feet and 240 miles per hour, relied on twin Aldis lights for exact altitude, the bomb arme using a wooden sight for range. The upkeep bombs spun backwards at 500 revolutions per minute, as ground crews had calculated optimal rotation for skipping over the 30-yard torpedo nets. On the dam, Wehrmachtfeldwebel Karl-Heinz Vollmar manned a 12.7 mm flak gun with a crew of 5, their weapons covering an effective range of 2,000 meters. Visibility was 4,500 meters with low cloud at 800 feet, wind speeds at 12 miles per hour. Intense fire met the first bombers, resulting in the loss of Flight Lieutenant Dave Maltby's aircraft after striking the dam at 2,347 hours. By 0016 hours, 3 Lancasters had dropped their weapons. 2 bombs struck short, but squadron leader Henry Young's mine exploded at the dam's base, opening a visible fissure. Meanwhile, at Edersee Dam, Flight Lieutenant Les Knight's team contended with deceptive spillway currents and narrow approach lanes, only 120 meters wide. The Eder Dam's 36-meter-thick base could absorb heavy impacts, but the precision of the spinning mine overcame the resistance after multiple runs. At 0115 hours, RAF Intelligence Officer Group Captain John Whitworth at RAF Scampton intercepted a coded signal, dinghy. This indicated breach confirmation and immediate downstream flooding. Factories within a 6-mile radius lost power as the surge advanced. At 0130 hours, the hydrodynamic impact generated waves up to 30 feet, propagating destruction through the Ruhr industrial sector. At 0133 hours, Captain Otto von Hoffmann, chief engineer at the Mana Dam Control Station, observed a precipitous drop in gauge readings on the primary pressure manifold. The central Borden gauge, calibrated for maximum stress loads of 2,200 psi, had dropped from 1,870 psi to under 400 psi within 2 minutes, an unprecedented loss. Simultaneously, the auxiliary vibration sensors, set along the dam's western outflow galleries, registered seismic activity of 4.1 on the local scale, far above routine operational levels for the structure. The emergency siren was triggered at 0135 hours, with staff rushing to inspect the western sluice towers now listing at a 2.3-degree angle. 85. The technical implications were immediately apparent. The dam's structural integrity had failed catastrophically. Expected stress dissipation for a 9,000-pound charge based on April simulations predicted localized cracking and no breach under direct impact, with less than a 10% probability of systemic collapse. Instead, real-time hydraulic data showed a progressive widening of the breach at 1.7 meters per minute, a tenfold acceleration compared to German forecasts. Von Hoffmann relayed the readings to Generalleutnant Walter Roland at Ruhr Industrial HQ within 3 minutes using the Siemens T52 Cipher teleprinter. 80. Allied ground monitoring teams, including RAF bomb damage assessment officers under squadron leader Harold Fenton, immediately received forward observation reports via SCR 504 radios relaying the breach width and water flow rates. With confirmation that the main spillway had failed, RAF Command ordered reserve communications to activate Operation Chastise Phase 2, the rerouting of reconnaissance sorties and the rapid deployment of sappers into the breached sector. Within 10 minutes, 230 men from the 9th Field Company, Royal Engineers, mobilized to exploit the dam's collapse, while British artillery crews repositioned 12-pounder field guns to defend the exposed approach routes. 85. Within the German 64th Flak Regiment stationed at Manisi, Battery Commander Hauptmann Joseph Kruger attempted immediate damage response. However, they lacked both engineering support and information, mistaking the collapse for sabotage or accidental detonation. Communications with their regimental HQ became intermittent, as field telephone lines were severed by floodwaters and the reserve wireless set model torn. Fu B was rendered inoperative by water damage. Regiment logs note unauthorized radio silence from 0138 hours onward. 80. Between 0137 and 0155 hours, escalating alarms spread the discovery across regional Wehrmacht, Luftwaffe, and civil administration units. Emergency reports from Wamel, Delitzsch, and Naheim recorded rapidly rising water levels, the destruction of local bridges, and the loss of power stations. The tactical situation had shifted irrecoverably. 23 defensive strongpoints between Mana and the Ruhr's confluence lost coordination, with command posts reporting full isolation by 0149 hours. 70. The Mana Dam was constructed with a composite core of blue basalt and concrete, boasting a width of 34 meters at the base and a maximum hydrostatic pressure tolerance of 2,100 psi. Its main defensive feature, a 120-foot thick earthwork core and tiered masonry face, was intended to absorb 1,000-pound GP bombs at distances exceeding 10 meters. The vulnerability arose at the concrete limestone interface, where high-speed shockwaves concentrated following subsurface detonation. The upkeep mine, designed by Barnes-Wallace, carried 6,500 pounds of Torpex explosive, firing at a water depth optimized for transferred waveforms. Laboratory work at Vickers-Armstrong in 1942 did not test against a lateral detonation exactly at the dam's toe, thus leaving this critical vector unexamined. Additional contributing factors: unexpected pressure spike from simultaneous multiple hits, under-calculated spallation at blueprint joints, and incomplete torpedo netting that failed to shield the lowest masonry blocks from direct impacts of skipping mines. 120. By May 1943, Group Captain John Whitworth had approved the low-level night attack plan, basing the decision on MI6 reported weaknesses in dam maintenance, particularly around the western abutments. Intelligence Report X-202 from 12 May 1943 indicated incomplete torpedo net deployment and diminishing anti-aircraft ammo stocks. However, RAF analysts underestimated the resilience of German spotlights and flak concentrations, leading to heavier casualties. In contrast to the April 1942 Augsburg raid, where high-altitude bombers failed to achieve direct hits against fortified power stations, Operation Chastise succeeded through synchronized, near-surface placement and concentrated delivery 8 upkeep mines versus 1 in prior attacks. RAF Operational Manual AP1307 had recommended staggered bomb runs, but local conditions, narrow valleys, persistent cloud forced crews into tighter, repeated approach paths. 120. Captured post-raid documents from the German Army's 4. Sperngroup confirmed the breach's technical cause. Section Commander Major Helmut Kappel's emergency log noted, failure propagated at interface where limestone buttressed the concrete basal layer following subaqueous detonation. No existing shell had tested this junction. Interrogation of Engineer Oberleutnant Hans Mertens, per TNA FO 1035-38, affirmed that routine maintenance neglected core microfractures at the outflow base. Battle records show peak downstream flow at Mana reached 310,000 cubic feet per second, compared to 22,000 at the previous max surge of 1925, a 1,309% increase. Documented minutes from the Essen Reichsministerium cited 11 hydroelectric stations now offline. 110. Number 9 Field Company, Royal Engineers, under Captain Robert Sinclair, immediately advanced into the Ruhr Valley breach at 0200 hours. Within 30 minutes, water flow in the main channel surged from 65,000 cubic feet per second to over 310,000, inundating production facilities across the Westphalia and Stiftswerk complexes. 47 personnel from Hydraulic Bau AG and the Wehrmacht's 572nd Pioneer Battalion were stranded and later reported missing, trapped by the advancing flood and sudden bridge collapses. The rapid loss of road access enabled British ground reconnaissance detachments to reach the North Bank, securing vital map and power relay systems that would have been inaccessible just hours before. The 1st Cheshire Regiment redirected 2 Bren gun carriers and a RAF wireless truck from the planned crossing at Binnerfeld to immediate support roles in the devastated industrial zone. 100. Generalleutnant Walter Roland at the Ruhr Industrial HQ received comprehensive breach data via the Siemens T-52 feed at 0211 hours. He ordered contingency shutdowns for 8 major turbines, halting operations for 18,000 munitions workers in Iserlohn, Hemmer, and Menden. The revised emergency protocol prioritized the diversion of Wehrmacht field medical units to Naheim, deemed most critical for civilian casualties, resulting in the repurposing of 3 ambulance trains. Meanwhile, Oberstleutnant Erich Klein, 53rd Corps Engineering Chief, redirected all available bridging equipment from the Rhine sector to restore communications, noting that 5 pontoon sets would be insufficient for the new breach width now surpassing 70 meters. Radio dispatch Blitz Dam sent at 0226 hours ordered all eastern Ruhr flag batteries to reserve, abandoning their former dam defense posts. 100. By 0300 hours, over 6,000 acres of Ruhr Valley farmland and infrastructure were submerged. The British 9th Field Company was 2 hours ahead of projected penetration timetables through the breach zone. Projected casualties had been 1,500 in this sector. Actual confirmed at 663, reflecting a 56% reduction due to early warning from breach observations. Strategically, the planned sabotage timetable Operation Chastise accelerated by 28 hours, enabling a secondary wave against additional targets by May 18. Post-war British analysis estimated that the breach shortened Ruhr interdiction by 5 days and saved an estimated 2,000 Allied and civilian lives. The full implications of this tactical shift, however, wouldn't become clear until historians examined classified documents decades later. 100. Documents recovered in 1973 revealed a previously unpublished diary from Flight Sergeant Colin Lambert, wireless operator, 617 Squadron, describing the immediate confusion during the descent to Mana Dam. Lambert wrote on the 16th of May 1943, "We crossed the flak lane at tree height, tracer arcing upwards. Gibson's order to drop flares came so late we nearly overshot the approach." This account contradicted the official after-action report, which claimed precision timing on all runs. The discrepancy occurred due to heavy wartime censorship and the loss of several key crew testimonies. This detail remained unknown until the Lambert family donated his diary to the Imperial War Museum in 1973. Supply records from Royal Air Force 54 Maintenance Unit, logged on the 14th of May 1943, show a critical shortage of Aldis lamp bulbs and backup oboe navigation transmitters. Official operational plans required 38 lamp kits for 19 aircraft. Actual inventory listed only 25 functional sets, a 34% shortfall that compromised low-altitude accuracy. Flight Lieutenant Jeff Rice reported the shortage to Group Captain Whitworth, but replacement kits failed to arrive in time due to misrouted shipments. This logistical constraint meant only select crews had full operational visibility, directly affecting bombing precision and loss rates during the attack. The 17th of May 1943 RAF after-action report stated, "All upkeep bombs released as planned, 8 breached Mana and Edersee." However, German Wehrmacht incident logs at Bundesarchiv Militärarchiv recorded only 5 clear strikes at the 2 dams, and British medical records document 11 aircraft losses with 53 aircrew killed, not the initially cited 8 and 56. The discrepancy 11 losses versus 8, a 38% increase, was revealed in James Holland's 2013 research using declassified German flak battery logs, altering the accepted casualty narrative and highlighting underreported equipment failures. While High Command focused on dam wall breaches, soldiers of No. 9 Field Company Royal Engineers arriving at Naheim encountered bridge collapses, electrical fires, and rapidly rising water. Private William Forbes, sapper, improvised by using steel communication cable and empty fuel cans as makeshift flotation devices to ferry trapped civilians. This adaptation was repeated in at least 18 bridge crossings. Post-war interviews with 41 engineers confirmed the improvisational approach. Official manuals on river crossing proved impractical because of debris-choked waters and darkness, yet the doctrine remained unchanged until a 1946 training review acknowledged these flaws. Weather data from the Royal Air Force Meteorological Office for the night of the 16th to the 17th of May 1943 shows low fog over the Ruhr, with visibility at barely 1,000 yards, wind gusts to 15 miles per hour, and temperatures dropping to 4 degrees Celsius. British plans expected clear skies and calm actual fog, wind, and 3 degrees Celsius variation reduced target identification times by 28%. The Upkeep mine was rated for stable release at wind speeds under 10 miles per hour. At 15 miles per hour, the bounce trajectory routinely deviated, confirmed only by 1950s post-war wind tunnel analysis. This explained why several mines struck short or late despite optimal approaches. These overlooked details aligned with evidence historians found in operational field interviews and late-release technical archives. Post-war analysis completed in 1946 concluded that Operation Chastise crippled Ruhr industrial output by breaching the Mana and Edersee dams, largely relying on RAF mission logs and Air Ministry communiques. Historian Sir Charles Webster's 1954 official history argued that the dam's destruction caused decisive German power shortages, citing incomplete casualty and industrial records available then. The Royal Air Force 1939–1945 volume published in 1954 stated that British casualties numbered 53 killed, and all 8 destroyed aircraft were accurately logged. This interpretation persisted for nearly 2 decades, as German military records remained classified and British sources were considered authoritative. Early researchers mainly consulted Allied after-action reports and censored wartime press coverage. Declassification of German Wehrmacht engineering reports and Luftwaffe flak logs in 1971 significantly changed this assessment. Historian John Sweetman's 1978 examination of Bundesarchiv and RAF operational dossiers uncovered discrepancies in bomb strike counts and flood damage, with records indicating only 5 bombs struck. True and civilian casualties, though severe, were less than believed. Sweetman cited Major Helmut Kappel's emergency log. Failure propagated at interface where limestone buttressed the concrete basal layer. Comparing this attack to the 1942 Augsburg raid. At Augsburg, high-altitude bomb runs, over 10,000 feet, resulted in only 2 direct hits with 13% target destruction. At the Ruhr, low-level bouncing bombs achieved breach with 62% of attempts. The key difference: synchronized, low-altitude mine release at dam face produced a much higher breach probability. This led to a reassessment of technical innovation as the critical factor, not merely operational daring. Research published in 2018 by the International Bomber Command Center using lead aircraft telemetry data recalculated actual bomb drop zones and breach efficacy. Previous estimates said 8 hits yielded 2 breaches. New evidence supports only 5 clear strikes, a 38% revision. Some historians, including Max Hastings, argue the long-term strategic value was limited, citing rapid German repair efforts, while mainstream position supported by economic output records finds significant short-term disruption. Analysis by the RAF Historical Branch in 2019 concluded that the operation advanced Allied sabotage objectives by nearly a week. Debate continues over whether technical ingenuity or overall strategic effect merits greater emphasis, shaping modern interpretations of precision bombing and targeted infrastructure strikes. Wing Commander Guy Gibson, CO of 617 Squadron, age 25, from Simla, India, raised in England, was stationed at RAF Scampton on 16 May 1943. A pre-war RAF officer with a passion for flying, he volunteered for hazardous operations at the war's outbreak. At 2,340 hours, Gibson led the first wave against the Mana Dam and faced the dilemma of ordering repeat passes under concentrated flak despite mounting losses. In his 1944 memoir, Enemy Coast Ahead, Gibson recalled, "My men depended on me. Each run exposed them to the full weight of enemy guns. I could not order retreat." Within 1 hour of the Mana and Edersee breaches at approximately 0130 hours on May 17, 1943, devastating downstream flooding altered the operational landscape of the Ruhr Valley. Generalleutnant Walter Roland at Ruhr Industrial HQ received breach data by 0211 hours, prompting immediate shutdown of 8 major turbines, displacing more than 18,000 industrial workers. No. 9 Field Company, Royal Engineers, secured vital infrastructure on the North Bank, made accessible by the rapid loss of bridges and roads. The British 1st Cheshire Regiment, originally assigned to secure Binnerfield, redirected all elements to support immediate exploitation of the breach, requiring the transfer of 2 Bren gun carriers, a wireless truck, and sappers totaling nearly 70 personnel. By 0300 hours, over 6,000 acres were underwater. Strategic gain. 2 hours ahead of projected Allied advance, with 663 casualties versus an initial 1,500 estimate, a 56% reduction due to advanced warning and flexible deployment. Within 72 hours, operational planning across the Ruhr shifted. Operation Chastise's follow-on sabotage raids, originally scheduled for May 20, were accelerated by nearly 28 hours. Air Vice Marshal Ralph Cochrane, commander of No. 5 Group, allocated 4 additional Lancaster sorties and additional sappers to exploit weakened German defenses, each sortie consuming an extra 1,400 gallons of aviation fuel diverted from routine supply convoys. This came at the expense of 2 delayed Mosquito raids in southern Bavaria, directly reducing air cover in that sector. British casualty projections, initially at 1,600 ground personnel from dam-related operations, were revised to 700 based on reduced resistance and early flood warning. Supply allocation for bridging equipment shifted. 5 engineer sets requisitioned for Rhine crossings redirected to Ruhr, with average steel girder use increasing by 41% during emergency bridge-laying operations. By June 1943, the Ruhr campaign reflected the compounded impact. The Mana breach enabled the capture of the Herdijk hydroelectric plant by June 11, 7 days ahead of Allied expectation. This secured the Allies' foothold for Operation Crossbow, which launched on the original July 1 timetable. The breached dams, however, remained unrepaired until October, delaying German defensive preparations across 13 subsequent operations, including Operation Market Garden and Ruhr crossings. Personnel changes followed suit. Wing Commander Guy Gibson received the Victoria Cross on June 22 but was reassigned to training duty in August for his achievements. 13 Royal Engineers and 6 RAF officers received immediate commendations for adaptive tactics based on the dam breaches. British combined operations adopted a revised approach to river crossings direct exploitation of breach zones formally entering doctrine in November 1943. The greater strategic war timeline experienced a measurable shift. Key Ruhr territory over 710 square kilometers came under intermittent Allied control by September 14, 1943, 3 months earlier than previous projections. With the dams breached and industrial repair efforts delayed, 617 squadrons Lancasters became available for Operation Garlic by August, strengthening aerial interdiction efforts by delivering an additional 350 tons of ordnance to secondary targets. For the German side, the assumption of Ruhr industrial resilience was fundamentally altered. Post-event Army Group B planning documents from February 1944 show defensive emphasis transferred from fixed installations to mobile reserves, underscoring a systemic adjustment across the Western theater. These operational shifts informed strategic decisions at the highest levels of command throughout the remainder of the 1943 campaign. Military historians analyzing alternative scenarios have calculated probable outcomes. If Operation Chastise had failed to breach the Ruhr Valley dams, the Allied timetable for the Ruhr interdiction could not have commenced until at least July 10, 1943, delaying subsequent campaigns by 6 weeks. This estimate is based on the time necessary to accumulate sufficient heavy ordnance for alternate bombardment and the absence of terrain bridging opportunities the floods created. In Sir Charles Webster's 1954 study, casualty projections for a conventional full assault approach against intact Ruhr defenses ranged from 2,300 to 2,900, a minimum of 1,200 more than actual, driven by the need for direct infantry engagement and increased exposure to German flak. Control of the Ruhr's eastern corridor would have remained with German forces until mid-July, at least 7 weeks longer, supported by joint British and Bundesarchiv post-war logistics analyses that highlight a lack of bridging equipment and persistent anti-aircraft zones. Strategic options for the German defense would have included the continued redeployment of reserves to reinforce southern sectors, threatening to stall the momentum of the Allied summer offensive. Comparing Operation Chastise to similar precision raids highlights its unique character. The Dams raid: 133 aircrew, 19 aircraft, 260-mile raid route, 12 hours elapsed, 2 decameters breaches, and nearly 6,000 downstream acres flooded. Augsburg Power Station raid: April 1942 to 54 aircrew, 12 Lancasters, 600-mile route, no significant breach, 13% target destruction. Peenemünde raid: August 1943 to 596 aircraft, 1,429 aircrew, 1,800 miles total successful weapons facility targeting, but with 215 casualties and 2-week target production delay. Staff colleges at RAF Cranwell and Sandhurst routinely pair Operation Chastise with the Peenemünde mission in tactical curricula to illustrate the necessity of specialized ordnance and surprise. Approximately 17% of Westwall interdiction operations were contingent on Chastise results, compared to 13% on the earlier raid. John Sweetman's 1978 analysis concluded that the Dams raid ranked 5th among 12 decisive Western Front turning points, based on disruption to industrial capability, force mobility, and combined arms initiative. The academic consensus identifies Chastise as a moderately decisive event driven by innovation and precision rather than brute force. The RAF Historical Branch, drawing on post-1971 open documents, supports Sweetman's finding that technical adaptation, especially river exploitation and synchronized mine deployment, provided measurable acceleration of operational timelines and an immediate casualty reduction. The debate persists over long-term return on investment. Max Hastings, using German Ministry of Armaments archives, contends repair work outpaced direct damage after 6 months, but primary source analysis from both sides affirms substantial short-term impact achieved through an unprecedented combination of tactical surprise, adaptive bombing, and rapid ground exploitation. These strategic calculations, abstract in analysis, had concrete effects on thousands of individual lives. Wing Commander Guy Gibson, BC, 617 Squadron RAF, flight led for the Dams raid, returned to England in June 1943. After receiving the Victoria Cross, he was reassigned to instructor duties and traveled across Britain advocating for precision bombing training until 1944. In his 1944 memoir, Enemy Coast Ahead, Gibson recounted, "I knew that every second above the water lengthened our odds. We pressed on regardless, the task ahead unchanged by risk." He kept in contact with over 30 surviving squadron members. Gibson's medals, logbooks, and annotated memoir are preserved at the Royal Air Force Museum, London. He died in 1944, aged 26, when his Mosquito crashed near Steenbergen, Netherlands. The Dambusters Memorial at Woodhall Spa was dedicated on May 17, 1987. The centerpiece is a granite marker, inscribed with the names of the 53 aircrew killed, ringed by water channels to evoke the breached dams. Annual commemorations each may draw over 2,000 visitors. The 80th anniversary in 2023 included RAF flypasts and participation from surviving family members. The UK Defence Academy at Shrivenham incorporates Operation Chastise into its Joint Operations course, teaching the consequences of targeted infrastructure strikes and adaptive bombing techniques. In 1946, the British Army adopted a formal doctrine for riverbank exploitation, revising bridging unit requirements for all field engineer battalions based on Chastise experience, impacting training for over 50 units. The Imperial War Museum holds over 1,100 documents and 29 oral histories from Operation Chastise's principal participants. The tactical innovations of the raid continue to influence military planning. The principle of synchronized low-level attack informed Operation Black Buck during the Falklands conflict in 1982. The RAF's 2015 report traced aerial navigation improvements to oboe and Aldous lamp deficiencies experienced during Chastise. Bantam-class bridging vehicles introduced in 1947 emerged in response to urgent engineering difficulties revealed by the flood aftermath. Chastise led to a permanent review of command decision cycles. Operational debriefings after 1943 highlighted the risks of real-time tactical delegation, culminating in adoption of specialist liaison officers in all bomber groups post-1946. The former Edersee Dam battle sector is now a protected educational site, receiving over 30,000 annual visitors.